was born by the roadside, somewhere in County Kildare.
I think it's all over. It is, and Kildare are the champions. Champions for the first time in 42 years.
And it's the red I will repair.
The Cora of Kildare.
Kildare Speaks with Fiorua. You're listening to Kildare Speaks with me, Fiorua, a podcast that profiles individuals and groups in the county of Kildare, Ireland. So, we're on to episode 7, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening for the last 6 episodes. Episode 7 is brought to you on, what date is today? I think it's the 8th of August, and this is when Kildare County has just been put back into lockdown. So it's been a strange day for residents of the county, but hopefully we'll rise above it. So I want to thank Kildare County Council, as I do every week, for funding this podcast. And this week's guest is a fella I'll tell you about in a second. First, I want to tell you a little bit about how you can listen to the podcast and how you can help the podcast get even more listeners. So it's on all platforms. It's on the Spotify and the iTunes and YouTube as well. So just subscribe on them ones if you want to. And then we have a Facebook page, which is Facebook. Then just look up Kildare Speaks Podcast. So it's facebook.com/Kildare Speaks Podcast. If you could tell people about the page, it'd be great. Also, of course, if anybody has anything that they think that would make a good subject matter for the podcast, let me know. I'm going to keep this going as long as I can, so if you have anyone that you think would make a good interview, give me a shout, give me a message. You can email me as well on fiaruamusic, Fiarua music @gmail.com. So without further ado, I learned that today. I was saying adieu for years, but it's actually adieu. There you go, that's my Kildare education. There we are. We have a guest by the name of Tom Noone this week. Many people who are into the theatre and stuff like that would know Tom's name. He's a writer as well as an actor and a director, and he wrote some plays that are about Naas and people years ago in Naas during the First World War, and he's talking about that in the interview. He's also a school teacher, and we went to the Moat Theatre yesterday and had a chat. The Moat Theatre, of course, is the main theatre in Naas, and we sat down and had a chat yesterday about theatre and about life and about where we're going in the future as regarding performance and outdoor performance, indoor performance. So this is Tom Noone. This is episode 7 of Kildare Speaks. I want to thank again Kildare County Council and of course Tom for being my guest. Enjoy, folks. I'll see you next week. Hello, Tom. How are you today?
I'm good, Owen. How are you?
I'm great. We're sitting in the Moat Theatre in the centre of Naas, right beside the actual physical moat, and I feel like I'm at home after being a few weeks away from the town. Is this like a little home for you, the Moat Theatre?
It is the Moat Theatre, but not just the Moat Theatre, but the moat itself. I mean, it's a landmark of Naas, and I mean it's such an important place in Naas. It leads to the canal, it leads to the town, and it's part of our history. So the theatre itself is I looked at it's a great theatre. I'm a member here, but more importantly, I suppose, is the moat, the hill of the moat here in Naas. Its significance for Naas people. So yeah, it's always good to be up around this neck of the woods.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the theatre as the interview goes on, but just about the moat itself. Are you? I'm not that familiar with the history of the actual moat itself. It's not. Is it man-made or is it natural, or was there a castle on top of it?
Yeah, well, it's man-made. It was a lookout post, wasn't it? Going way back when.
A garrison town.
Yeah.
Period, yeah.
No, way before that.
Right.
Way before that. So it would have from here they would have communicated with other hills like the Hill of Allen and so on. Yeah,
going back to that.
So it wasn't just a fortification. It was a means of communication as well.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a house up there too.
There is. Is there somebody still living in the house?
No, he died, Lord of mercy on him, not too long ago. So there's no one in it at the moment. But I don't know much else about it.
Okay. So where did you grow up, Tom?
I grew up in Coill Dubh.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so Coill Dubh is about 11 kilometres or 12 kilometres from Naas, and it was a purpose-built Bord na Móna village. And for many people who don't know what a Boardnamona village would have looked like, the best way I could describe it is, if you can imagine in the north of England, you would have had colliery towns that were built
industrial,
built around a coal mine.
Yeah.
Well, Coill Dubh was quite simply built around the peat factory and the bog. And everybody who lived there in the 160 houses, all purpose-built houses, worked for Boardnamona. So I grew up there because my mother is from Carbery, and my father is from Naas. And then at the age of 10, then we moved here to Naas.
Okay.
So I'm a native, but
Yeah.
I always say, because some people get surprised and go, I never knew you lived in Coill Dubh. And I always say, well, Naas is my hometown, and Coill Dubh is my home village.
And you've got a good hurling team and a good soccer team in Coill Dubh, so you can always get that side of it as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Is Coill Dubh probably one of the only towns that was built like that in Ireland? I mean, I don't know many towns that were built specifically for a factory.
It's the only one that was built on its own. So what you would have had in places like Tullamore, Mount Mellick, Edenderry, and many towns in the Midlands, Boardnamona would have built a row of houses on the outskirts of the town. Do you know what I mean? But there was a town. There was
existing.
A town already there. Coill Dubh was unique in that huge, vast expanse, open space to create a new village.
And I presume there would have been a lot of people driving in from the west to get jobs.
Yes,
and
loads came from the west. Loads from Mayo, from Kerry, from Galway, from the north, from Donegal.
And was this the start of the Free State period, or was it maybe 1930s? Or
no, Coill Dubh was built in early 1960.
Okay.
Yeah. So you had a movement by the government at the time to intensify peat production, and that peat was used to burn to power stations, to create electricity. But even back then, everyone knew, Boardnamona knew, the government knew that this wasn't inexhaustible, and that this resource would only last for 40 years.
Okay, so by say the 90s, how many people within this? I know we're talking a lot about Coill Dubh, but it is quite an interesting area, and I know that you've wrote some. Potentially wrote a play around the.
I have with the Abbey Theatre.
We'll talk about that in a second. But so by the 1990s, how many people in Coill Dubh were working for Boardnamona, or is it just
none? It closed down, and many of the people, if not all, had the opportunity to buy the house that they would have been renting from Boardnamona, even though they were working for Boardnamona. So they were renting it at a token price, and all were given the option to buy their own houses. So there's no peat production out there at the moment, out in Timahoe, none whatsoever. So all of the people out there are probably second, third, fourth generation from people who moved there in the 60s and 70s generally. So and
the interesting thing, although it's quite a modern town, an invented town if you want, it's called Coill Dubh. There's not many names within Kildare, at least, that have the Irish name first, like Blackwood, or there is an area called Blackwood too, actually.
Yeah, it is Blackwood, Coill Dubh. And look, for anybody who lives there, they kind of take it for granted. But for people from the outside, it's a really unique place to live and to grow up, where you live among people, all of whom were dependent on Boardnamona and turf production and peat production. And it was a fantastic place to live. Huge green spaces. Huge green spaces. Women. Lots of freedom to go and do, it was just a place where there was great camaraderie, great community spirit, great neighbourliness.
And then you moved to Naas, which would have felt like entering New York, was it? From
moving to Naas, it felt like miles away. But of course it isn't, and you're moving into a really big town. But back then, in the early 80s, Naas was quite a small town. There's very few people here. I mean, the town ended at various points, and that was it. And where we grew up, many people in Naas would know it. It's called Kingsford's Terrace, which is opposite Kingsford's Avenue. My grandfather and other servicemen built those houses. It's just before the entrance to Naas Tennis Club, and that was pretty much the end of the town. The town ended there. And I often remember as a youngster, when you'd ask fellas who used to hang around with you, do you want to come down to my house? They'd say, oh no, that's miles away.
That's out in the sticks.
That's miles away.
I remember my teacher telling me, this was around 1989, when I was in primary school, the teacher saying that Naas is the fastest growing town in Europe, and he said it very factually. I don't know whether it was true or not, but it was definitely growing fast at that period, right into the 90s then, in the boom time, and it changed overnight really.
Yeah, we heard that as well. We heard that statistic. I suppose being a satellite town of Dublin, it attracted many people. And it's still growing today. It's a fantastic town in that respect.
So, when you grew up in Naas, when you went into you go to secondary school in the Christian Brothers?
Yeah, I went to the St. Corbin's, the primary school, and went straight from there into the secondary school.
And now you're teaching there?
And now I'm teaching there.
When you were in school, were you one of the arty crowd, were you one of the sports crowd, or how did you end up getting into the arts, or was it something that kind of developed through your 20s? Or?
Yeah, I'd say I was more a late developer. I always loved sport, and I always loved the arts as well, but I didn't really find a vehicle or the means to achieve any of that till later. But yeah, definitely I was always into art itself, and I was always into poetry and writing and obviously reading and theatre. So, but yeah, that didn't develop till later on.
Yeah.
But Naas CBS, the school itself, as a kid going there, it was a great school at the time, really good, and still is today. It's great.
And when did you start? Was the moat a big part of your starting into the acting and the writing and theatre?
I started a bit in England when I was teaching in England, and I was taking parts in a few small plays here and there. And then I got involved as well with Coill Music and Drama Society, and I was in a play for them, and it kind of snowballed then. I think you get to an age then where you have more time, and you're ready to kind of maybe take on a new pastime, a new role, or to go serious into something, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's painting, so that's the way it worked for me in the last, say, 10 years or more.
Was there a specific moment where you said, okay, I'd like to write, or was there a point where you were just acting and concentrating on that, or is there anything you'd prefer to do, or Yeah,
I was acting at the time and I was enjoying it, but the story of my great grandfather was one that I thought had to be.
Was that the first play that you wrote?
The first big one, the first important one, and that was it was called Who Will Separate Us, and I wrote it for two reasons. One, to tell the story of Naas people, and also because I was a bit upset really that for all that drama existed in the town, nobody in the Moat Theatre had ever considered giving back a play about Naas to Naas people, and that's not good, you know. So I said, look, I'm going to rectify that. Naas people deserve a Naas play, and they deserve a play about them as a people and about the town and how it developed, and the town, and how it developed alongside a major political event. The First World War. And there's still more scope, and I'm in the middle of writing another collage of plays which reflects important moments, historical moments in the town of Naas. But yeah, at the time I was really set on giving Naas a Naas play, and I was disappointed that nobody had done it before.
I've seen the play, and it's very much about World War One. Do you think that because the Free State developed after World War One, that there was a lot? I mean, there was a lot of stories to tell that concerned people within the world that served in World War One that maybe were kind of forgotten, or maybe purposely forgotten, because we were now a free state and we just wanted to. We could celebrate 1916 but nothing else, or
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know the answer to that, but there are lots of stories about the men and women at the time in Naas during the First World War, and they're fantastic stories, amazing. Some of them plays in their own right. I think we airbrushed out a lot of the First World War stories, really, and of course it was all superseded by 1916, and rightfully so, because 1916 is like it's a pivotal moment for this country, a pivotal time.
So Naas was a garrison town during the First World War.
Yeah, it was a garrison town. Yeah. So where you have Kildare at the moment, that was the barracks, and that existed there up until about 20 years ago. Yeah. And myself and quite a few others, and my brothers and a few others, would have went there every Monday and Wednesday night to the boxing there, and we used to do boxing.
Yeah, I remember boxing there.
So the barracks was a huge, as we called it, the barracks was a big landmark in the town, and then the barracks was an apprentice school. Okay. So the apprentices used to go there. So it was a real focal point for the town as well. But going back further, obviously from the 1880s right up to the 1920s, it was a British Army garrison, and many of the men in Naas worked there either as regular soldiers or as part of the militia, where they'd be signed up for 6 weeks of the year or 8 weeks of the year.
Dubh infiltrating John Dubh, who of course was infiltrating the army guys. It's quite a strong visual when you talk about them times. But
if we start talking, we'll probably get lost in the whole.
But you're right. You have to consider that John Levi would have been speaking to many of the soldiers in the
in the
barracks,
pubs, or knowing them, like,
and signing them up. Yeah, definitely.
So just going back to that, I want to